Today, I'm sharing truths that only insiders know but never dare to talk about. If you're planning to buy or sell an investment property, you need to hear this. So why is it that when housing prices skyrocket, some investors suddenly end up in trouble? After watching this, you'll know how to avoid risks and never end up like them. I'm Joey. I only speak the truth and only do real work. Recently, Australian housing prices have started to rise across the board again. Just look at the latest data. The combined index of the 5 major capital cities is climbing once more. Brisbane is up 8.9% for the year, Perth 7.7%, and even Melbourne is making a full recovery. With interest rate cuts, the market has heated up again. So what are a lot of people doing now? They're borrowing money and rushing back into the market, thinking that real estate is the safest hedge asset. But in recent years, I've noticed a very strange phenomenon. Every time housing prices surge, a large number of investors actually end up going under. One wave of investors after another ends up confused and becomes the victims instead. And just recently, I've already heard several stories like this around me. Some seemingly seasoned investors, each owning more than 5 properties, suddenly had their cash flow breakdown when the market was booming and they were forced to slash prices and sell their houses in a hurry. Don't think this is just an isolated case. It actually involves bank loans and family wealth, and we're talking about significant sums here. Compared to previous periods when the market was flat, this wave seems to be hitting the hardest. So why does every major blow-up seem to happen right when housing prices are on the rise? What kind of major pitfalls are actually hidden in the Australian property market? So why is it that the more housing prices rise, the more problems investors seem to have? If even experienced investors can't hold on, then how safe are the properties owned by ordinary people like us? The reason why soaring housing prices can actually lead to blow-ups is because of Australia's unique paper wealth logic. Many people didn't necessarily buy the wrong property. Instead, they overused bank refinancing, also known as refinancing. As ordinary people, we tend to assume that if housing prices go up, landlords must be making a fortune, right? How could things possibly go wrong? But that's actually not the case. A lot of investors' cash flow is nowhere near as healthy as you might think. And that's where the problem lies. Many investors aren't content with slowly accumulating wealth. Instead, they start playing a kind of financial acceleration game. As soon as their property value goes up, they immediately go to the bank for refinancing, cashing out the appreciated portion. For example, if a property worth 1 million rises to 1.2 million, they immediately cash out over 100,000 to use as the down payment for their next property. This kind of operation gives them 2 advantages. First, by using only a small amount of their own capital, they can leverage a property portfolio several times larger. In essence, they're increasing their leverage. Second, they can continuously take advantage of the bank's appraisals to gamble. Remember, it's a gamble. They bet on property prices continuing to rise in order to pay off today's loans. As long as you bet in the right direction, property prices keep rising, and interest rates stay low, you can instantly amplify the meager rental income into a multiplied increase in asset value. But here's where the problem lies. If you bet in the wrong direction, or if the environment suddenly changes, your losses will snowball and quickly blow up your entire cash flow. These investors who got wiped out are the ones who overestimated their own cash flow. Let me give you a real-life example. A friend of mine, during the era of low interest rates, bought 2 apartments. At that time, the monthly rent just barely covered his mortgage payments. After housing prices went up, he refinanced and bought a 3rd apartment. He thought since housing prices would keep rising, a temporary negative cash flow wasn't a problem. He could just cover it with his salary. But what happened was, after the pandemic in recent years, interest rates shot up rapidly and his monthly repayments skyrocketed. In order to keep his finances afloat, he had no choice but to keep cashing out from House A, his first property, to cover the shortfall on House B. Every time he held onto a property with negative cash flow, he was bleeding money every month. When the banks tightened lending and he couldn't refinance anymore, it quickly crushed his cash flow. He really did end up selling a property in Perth at a loss. Although he bought it based on my advice, that was several years ago. This year, he sold it in a hurry for $50,000 below market value, which is really a shame. This refinancing model is like a magnifying glass. When the market is calm, even if investors make the wrong bet, it's okay. You can still make up for it in the next round of price increases. But once you encounter a sharp, one-sided rise in interest rates, or if your property sits vacant for a month or 2, the losses really start to snowball, and it can crush you in an instant. What's even more troublesome is that many investors aren't satisfied with just owning 1 or 2 properties. Some go as far as using complex trust structures, or even become so-called developers themselves. For example, guaranteeing rental income for 2 years, or taking on house package developments. I think the most outrageous thing is that this illusion of paper wealth has already extended its claws from seasoned players to ordinary families. So don't think that this only affects big-time investors and has nothing to do with you. I want to remind everyone that traps always appear faster than opportunities. There are a few things you must be careful about before buying a house. First, every time there's a bull market, all kinds of so-called get-rich-quick strategies pop up, like zero down payment home purchases, refinancing, or even buying 5 properties in a year or 6 in 2 years. It sounds like a sure win, but in reality, the risk is just being hidden for later, and after a couple of years, that person disappears. The hotter the market, the more of these scams there are, and the deeper the traps. Second, you need to recognize the importance of cash flow. In capital cities, if you simply rent out a house as a whole, it will never generate positive cash flow. Its only value is long-term appreciation. If the property doesn't appreciate, all your holding costs, council rates, utilities, land tax mean you're actually losing money. But if you can buy a property with positive cash flow, then even if the property doesn't go up in value, or even if you refinance, it's not a big problem. Third, even if you have a clear view of the overall trend and believe property prices will keep rising, that doesn't necessarily mean you'll make money. Why is that? Because what really makes you money isn't whether you know prices will rise, but whether you can withstand the fluctuations, whether you can hold on. Property is a long-term investment tool. If you insist on speculating in the short term, you're very likely to get caught out by interest rates and policy changes. So remember this, Australian real estate is your safe deposit box, not your ATM. You must ensure the cash flow from your rental income, and even when you refinance, don't exceed your rental income by too much. In fact, what I recommend most is that after each refinance, your repayments should just match your rental income. This way, you'll create a positive cycle. The more you cash out, the wealthier you become.